can't see your face.
I know, I don't know if I can either.
It's kind of a weird angle. I can't really tell.
I like my tissue box technique. Okay. So today I'm here to convince you that genetically engineered crops can protect the environment. To begin, I'll show you how genetically engineered crops decreases our use for agrochemicals. I'll also explain how GMO foods use less land and water. And finally, I'll show you how utilizing genetically engineered crops decreases greenhouse gas emissions. I'll show you first how genetically engineered crops decreases the use for agrochemicals. To begin, the first genetically engineered crop was made in 1980 with the intent to create a crop hybrid that would reduce pest damage to crops. These plants were spliced so that they would produce the Bacillus thuringiensis gene, or Bt gene, which is naturally toxic to common agricultural pests and is harmless to humans. In 2006, the U.S. Department of Agricultural Economic Survey found that insecticide use was 8% less in Bt corn crops than traditional crops. This makes it more environmentally friendly by decreasing the damage from chemical runoff and drift. In addition, a group of herbicide-resistant crops were also created. This allowed farmers to use non-traditional forms of herbicides, such as glyphosate, by making crops resistant to them. Glyphosate inhibits the weed's ability to make an essential amino acid called tryptophan, which ultimately causes the weed to die. Glyphosate is low in acute toxicity, is non-carcinogenic, and easily breaks down in water, making it more environmentally friendly by not persisting in our groundwater. Another reason why we should support genetically modified crops is their ability to use less land and water. First, with our increasing demand of food production and our increasing population, genetically modified foods can be a more sustainable food source. Genetically engineered crops were created to yield more product in a single harvest while using a smaller plot of land. Field studies shows that genetically modified crops yield 6 to 10% more than a traditional crop. This means that they're able to make more food without increasing their agricultural footprint, making them more environmentally friendly. Additionally, of all the water available for use, 70% of it is currently being used for agriculture. With the technology of genetically engineered crops, we can create crops hybrids that are resistant to drought and require less water while still stimulating growth. This is just another genetic trait making genetic modified foods more beneficial to the environment, and by applying genetically modified crops, we can save one of our most valuable resources, which is our water. My final point is that by utilizing genetically engineered crops, we can decrease greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, genetically modified traits that I've already talked about indirectly benefit the environment by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. According to an article in The Lancet, agricultural food production and agricultural-related changes in land use significantly contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. Genetically resistant crops to herbicides and pesticides can decrease our amount of tractor use on a farm. It's estimated that roughly half of a tractor use on a farm is currently used to spray insecticides only on traditional crops. With crops resistant to herbicides and pesticides, we can reduce our need for tractors, which ultimately reduces our greenhouse gas emissions. Also, another major source of emissions in food productions is our use of fertilizer. Fertilizer can stimulate growth in crops, but it also adds excess nitrous oxide to the environment. And excess nitrous oxide is an extreme contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Genetically modified crops allow us to create crops that yield more product in a single harvest in a smaller plot of land without the additive fertilizer. So genetically modified crops can decrease greenhouse gas emissions by decreasing our need of fertilizer, ultimately making it just another benefit to our environment. I came here today to convince you that genetically engineered crops can protect the environment. To start, I showed you how genetically engineered crops decrease the use of agrochemicals. I also explained how genetically modified foods use less land and water. And finally, I showed you how utilizing genetically engineered crops decrease greenhouse gas emissions. That's it.